Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast. I'm going to be telling you how to help children get language ready for kindergarten. So we are talking about our little ones who are going to kindergarten this fall and what we can do this summer to help them get caught up and get ready to succeed when it comes to their kindergarten. So today specifically, we're going to be talking about getting language ready, and that means all of those language skills and communication skills that they're going to need going into kindergarten. So welcome to the podcast. I am Carrie Clark. I am a speech language pathologist in Columbia, Missouri, and I am live recording this inside the hub. Hey, Renee. Hey, Jessica. You guys can pop over into the chat and ask questions as we go along. If you would like to attend our live podcast recordings, you can head over to hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. That's also where you're going to find our language catch-up camp. It's a virtual summer camp for parents and caregivers that we're doing this summer to give you guys an opportunity to learn how to help your child get ready for the next school year in terms of language skills, and also give you a structured program that you can follow with your child. We give you the lessons, the workbooks, and everything. So if you would like information on that, go to speechandlanguagekids.com. You'll see a banner at the top for our camps. All right, but let's jump on in. So we're going to talk about some of the skills that we like to see with our 5-year-olds who are entering kindergarten. So if you are listening in a different country, your ages may be a little different, but here in the States, we start them at 5 years old. As long as they turn 5 by the beginning of the school year, then they're able to start kindergarten. Now, I know the requirements are different in a lot of different places. For example, here in Missouri, we don't actually require kindergarten. That's an optional grade, and formal schooling starts at first grade. So I know that everywhere will have slightly different rules, slightly different requirements, but we're going to go over some general skills that we like to see children have at 5 years of age and how that helps them in the classroom. And then we're going to talk about some strategies of how you can help children recover or gain some of these skills before they go into kindergarten. Now, I'm also going to say that our public school system is here to support children in whatever ways they need. So if you have a child or you're working with a child who is not close to these marks, they can still succeed even in the public education system. They just may need a little extra support, or they may need some extra services. So don't get totally discouraged if you feel like we're far off from this. I want this to be motivational, not scary. So if you hear these skills and you're thinking, okay, oh man, there's a lot of these skills that my child doesn't have yet or is struggling with, I want you to just think about what are a couple of the skills that we could work on over the summer that would help boost them up and give them a better chance when they get to kindergarten without worrying about having to get every single one of those skills mastered by August, okay? So try to keep that in mind. Try to keep it all in perspective. Kids develop at different rates, at different paces, and they're going to do it their own way. So this is going to give you an idea, but don't get too hung up on the nitty-gritty. Okay, so I'm going to break this into a couple different groups. We're going to start with expressive language. So expressive language is how we are able to speak or communicate our message. So when we have a child who is 5 years old going into kindergarten, we really like for them to be able to speak in complete sentences. Now, that doesn't mean that they need to have grammatically correct sentences all of the time. If they're leaving out a few words here and there, that's fine. But we would like to see them being able to use sentences that are 4, 5, 6 words long, as opposed to maybe just using one word at a time or maybe just 2 or 3 words together. So we'd like them to be able to use some longer sentences and to be able to use those complete sentences to express their needs, express their thoughts, their ideas, interact with others, okay? We also want them to be able to tell a simple story or tell you about something that happened in the past, but we're not super hung up yet on whether or not it made total sense. Did they provide all the details? Was it in the right order? Less worried about that at this age than just, can they tell us a simple story, retell a story they've heard, or tell us about something that happened? Okay, so that's another expressive language. We also want them to be able to ask and answer some basic questions. So that includes questions like who, what, where, why, how. Sometimes we get some when in there, but I will say when questions, especially those time concepts, are pretty challenging still for a 4 to 5-year-old. So if they're not quite all the way on when, that's okay. But we want them to be able to answer some of those basic questions and to be asking some of those questions as well. We also want to see that they are using a lot of different types of words. So they should be able to use nouns, but they should also be able to use verbs and descriptive language like colors or sizes or feelings. And they don't have to know them all yet, right? But just the fact that they are not just speaking in all nouns or just speaking in all verbs like go, we want them to be using a variety of words to, again, express their wants, express their needs, talk about their emotions, let you know how they're feeling, okay? So that's kind of the big picture of our expressive language, our speaking skills. We want them to be able to just communicate with us, to tell us a simple story, retell something that happened, ask us questions, answer our questions. They should be able to do this with a variety of words and sentences that are about 4 to 6 words long on average. Okay, so again, if they're really far off from that, then maybe we can look at giving them some supports and services over this summer to get them kind of moving that direction. If they're just missing 1 or 2, then that gives us something that we can work on, but it's nothing to be terribly concerned about, right? Okay, so that's expressive language. Let's talk about some of the other areas, and then we'll go in and talk about some strategies. So the next area is receptive language. And this is how well we understand language. And so here are some different skills that we might see as meaning that they are understanding, right? That they are representing that they understand language through use of these skills. So the first one is following directions. By the time a child enters kindergarten, they should be able to follow 1-step directions and maybe some basic 2 or 3-step directions. Now, I will say most kindergarteners are very distractible, and if you've ever been in a kindergarten classroom when the teacher gives a multi-step direction, there are very few children that follow it the first time without prompts. So don't get hung up on that, but they should be able to follow some directions, and that is a really easy one to be working on at home because there are times throughout our entire day where we're asking our child to do things. And so we can make sure that we're presenting those directions and then pausing and giving them an opportunity to follow it. So if we say, go put on your shoes, and then we immediately follow it up with shoes. Hey, shoes, I need you to get your shoes. Look at me, shoes, let's go get the shoes. Here's the shoes, let's put on your shoes. Then we're not really giving them an option or an opportunity to follow that direction before we follow up and continue prompting. So we can say, hey, look at me. I need you to get your shoes. And then we can pause and make ourselves silent, which is sometimes the hardest part for me because I like to talk, but we can wait and give them that opportunity to think through that direction and follow it. Then if they don't follow it, instead of immediately giving the direction again, we can say, hey, I asked you to do something. Do you remember what it was? It was something you needed to get. Then we pause. They still don't get it. It was something you needed to put on your feet. And even if we have to spell it out so explicitly, having them have an opportunity to try to think of what it was makes it so that they're better able to follow those directions in the future. Okay, so following directions is a great one. We also want them to understand some basic concepts like big and little and more or less or under or over or in. We want some of those basic concepts to be there so that when their teacher says, okay, go over to the stand and grab me the big book, or go get the thing that's under your table, that they can start to understand some of those concepts. We also want them to be able to answer questions about a story or an event. So now we're having them hear something like a story and then be able to answer a question to indicate to us that they understood it. And we also want them to know what things are called, whether we're showing them pictures in a book or we're talking about things in our environment. If I say, go grab your pencil, and they don't know what a pencil is, that's going to make it challenging for them to participate in those school activities, right? And then along with concepts, things like opposites, hot and cold, up and down, those can be helpful to understand as well. Okay, so those are expressive language and receptive language. And I kind of alluded to this as well, but how do we help them get those skills? So a lot of it is just modeling it during the day and thinking about, okay, what is the one thing I want them to focus on practicing today? Is it concepts? Okay, let's pick a couple concepts and just model them over and over throughout the day. We'll say those things. Is it answering where questions? Great, I'll ask where questions all day long. If we can focus on one thing per day or per week and really hit it over and over and over again, they're going to have a better chance of picking up that skill than if I try to hit all of those all the time. So think through the ones that you think they're struggling with the most or that would help them the most once they get to kindergarten, and then just model those throughout the day, provide opportunities for them to practice those skills, and create pauses so they have the opportunity to try. All right. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other areas that are helpful when we're going into kindergarten. And the first one is literacy. Now, I am not saying that your entering kindergarten child needs to be able to read and write, because that is usually not the requirement. That's not what we need from them. But there are some foundational language skills that lead to some really great literacy as they go along. And so one of the biggest things, the biggest thing with language and literacy is read to your child. If you do nothing else this summer to get them ready for kindergarten, read a book to them every day. Just pick up a picture book, go to the library and get some, or if you already have some, just read a book once a day. Studies have been done that show that reading to your child has the biggest impact on their language and literacy skills as they get older. So just do that. Once a day, read a book, okay? But there's some other things we can do too if you're already beyond that stage. So being able to recognize some letter names, especially the ones in their name, or being able to recognize their name or spell their name out loud, that can be really helpful. But as a speech language pathologist, my perspective is that I would much rather children focus on sounds than letters at this stage, because they're going to get the letter stuff in school. That's going to happen. But what they need is to be able to hear the sounds and hear how we can manipulate sounds to make words, because that is what really serves as the foundation for literacy. And so we call this phonological awareness. You might hear it as phonemic awareness. And it is just understanding that words are made up of individual sounds and that those sounds can be manipulated to change the words. Okay, that's all that it is. So we can talk about rhyming. Cat, hat. They rhyme. Listen, they both end in at. Cat, hat. And that is the formula I use every time. I say the words. I say, oh, they rhyme. I tell them why it rhymes. They end in at. And then I say the words again. It's like a sandwich. So the ends are saying the words. And then in the middle, I explain what the concept is we're going for. Okay, so hat, cat, they rhyme. They both end in at, cat, hat. Okay, I can do the same thing with beginning sounds. So ball, bat. They both start with b. Listen, ball, bat. Okay, so talking about the sounds we hear, talking about rhyming, talking about alliteration, talking about ending sounds. Okay, those are all great things to do. We can also talk about syllables, how we can break a word into a syllable. So we can say butterfly. That word has 3 parts. Listen, butterfly. You hear me doing my sandwich? So we can clap or count out syllables. The other thing I like to do with this is play a guessing game. So I will say the syllables and I will have them guess the word. And I will make a pause in between each one. So I will say fly. What word was that? And I know that sounds really easy to us, but it's really hard at this age. So having them put the words back together. If they're struggling with that, then I make it stretchy instead of pauses. And so I'll say butterfly. And if they still don't get it, I make it a little shorter and shorter until I'm basically saying the word. And they go, I know it, it's butterfly. So that's a great way to do it. If they get to the point where they can do that though, you can do this with individual sounds. So I'll go, okay, I'm going to make a word. Let's see if you can guess it. B, a, t. Bat. That word is bat. And again, I can stretch it, bat. Just if we need a little bridge to get there, right? So you can do that with sounds. You can do it with syllables. And then just playing with those sounds. So what happens if I take the word bat and I take off the b and I switch it to a k? Let's listen. Cat. It went from bat to cat. Okay, so that's a little more advanced. You don't have to work on that one right now. But if they get there, you can play around with those sounds. But that's what I would rather people work on at this age than letters and shapes and colors. Obviously, those things are important too. But my SLP brain really likes the work on phonological awareness because it is such a foundation for every reading skill to come. Okay, so pre-literacy, phonological awareness, that's what I would recommend there. All right, the next section. Speaking of which, hey, I see a bunch of you in here. Awesome. If you guys have any questions on this or need further examples, pop over to the chat and you guys can ask those questions and I'll take them as we go along. Okay, the next piece is social interaction, social communication. This is really, really important, okay? The social piece is what makes or breaks us in kindergarten because it impacts everything. And especially if you have a child who hasn't maybe been in a full day daycare program where they're used to being around other children and having to negotiate and having to deal with issues, that can be a really important thing to let's get out and do some play groups this summer. Let's go to the park and talk to some other kids. Let's go to put ourselves in situations where we will be required to interact with kids our age because that's super, super important to kindergarten, okay? So the types of social communication skills we would like to see for kindergartners is we want them to be able to have a little bit of a back and forth conversation. It doesn't have to be very elaborate or very long, but we want them to be able to try and be starting to understand the give and take of conversation. We also want them to kind of be able to stay on a topic for a little bit, just a little bit, right? Just a couple of turns. If they vary or meander on their topics, that's okay. But if it's constantly, I say this thing, and then I'm talking about this, and then this, and then this, and we're bouncing back and forth, we're going to lose our friends. They're not going to understand what we're talking about. So being able to stay on a topic for just a short time. We want them to be able to advocate for themselves. So we need them to be able to say stop if somebody's doing something they don't like. We need them to be able to say, I need help. If they're struggling, we want them to be able to ask to go to the bathroom instead of sitting there and then having an accident because they were too scared to ask, or asking for clarification if they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. So we want them to be able to advocate for themselves and to be able to speak up when they need something. And alternatively, we need them to be able to understand that other people have boundaries as well. So we can explain, you have boundaries and you get to set boundaries for your body. You can say, stop, I don't like that. Okay, so we're giving them the ability to speak a boundary. But then they also need to understand that if someone else says, stop, I don't like that, they need to be able to respect that person's boundary as well. Oh, he said stop. He doesn't want to play that way. We're going to step back. Let's give him space. And so knowing how to respond to other people's boundaries about their bodies, but also classroom teachers' boundaries about what's acceptable at school and what's not. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not having that time right now. We're not asking questions right now. You're going to have to wait. It's time to be quiet. And so I've seen this described as from teachers as they need to hear no, right? They need to hear no in their everyday life before they go to kindergarten, because if kindergarten is the first time they have ever been told no, they're really going to struggle, right? But this is understanding that there are times and places for all the things that we want to do, and sometimes we can't do exactly what we want right now because of whatever it is. And so teaching them to wait, to take turns, to be able to say, oh, I really wanted to do this thing, but I understand that's not what we're doing right now, and be disappointed, but then to be able to kind of stay calm. And so that brings us to another social communication piece, which is managing your emotions and being able to regulate those to a degree. And I know this is so hard for our kindergartners, our 4-year-olds, our 5-year-olds have a huge time trying to manage their emotions. And so the best we can do for this is just to give them the words. Oh, you look mad. I see that your hands are tight and your face is scrunched and your voice is very loud. Okay, so we're giving them feedback about what's going on with their body so they can start to understand it. And then we're labeling it. You look mad. We're giving them the words for what that is. And then we can give them strategies or tools to help them calm down. So we can say, remember, we can take a deep breath, blow out the birthday candles. So we can give them some strategies to try. We can have them stomp their feet, or we can say, oh, you look like you need a break. Let's take a break and help them walk away. All right, so we can start to give them those tools. They're not going to master it before kindergarten, and that's okay. But if they've heard those words and they've heard you telling them strategies, they're more likely to receive that better in kindergarten when the teacher is giving them those words and those tools. Okay, so those are the big ones. Those are the big skills that we really want to see in our five-year-olds that are coming into kindergarten. Now, I want you to remember that the kids going into kindergarten next year are any range between 5 and 6 years old. There's going to be some who are like almost 6, right? Because that's how it works. It's a whole calendar year. And the age gap between a child who just turned 5 and a child who turns 6 tomorrow is huge. This is a very wide range of what is quote unquote normal. And then we see differences between boys and girls. Boys are often a little bit more delayed on some of these skills than girls are. Not always, but just on average, we see that gap. And then on top of all of that, these kids going to kindergarten this year were born in the pandemic. These are our 2020 babies. So these kids have had more challenges and more obstacles to overcome in their short 5 years than most anyone else in the world had in the first 5 years of their life. And a lot of those impacts came on communication skills because we were isolated, we were locked down, we were wearing masks. If we did have access to medical services, they may have been teletherapy. Things got missed. Therapies didn't get done as quickly as they should have. And then once we got to the point where we were ready to start doing therapies again, there was this huge influx of kids that needed support and not enough support to go around. So many kids didn't get the services they needed. Okay? So we live in a crazy world with unexpected circumstances, and these kids got hit the hardest. So it is okay if they are not there. It is okay if they are struggling. It is okay if you listen to that list and you went, oh my God, my child will never be ready. Because here's the deal. The school system is there to support these kids. These teachers have seen it all. They have seen kids with the exact delays that your child has or the exact challenges. Obviously, every child is different. What works is different, but they have a toolbox of strategies that they can use to help support kids with communication challenges. So don't feel dismayed, but think about this list of skills and think about how you could pick one or two to focus on this summer, how you could model them throughout the day, how you can talk about those skills, how you can encourage your child to practice those skills, and how you can work it into our daily interactions. Okay? Now, if you're looking for a program that is a little more robust, that is a little more structured, and you have a child who could sit down with you and do an activity for a couple of minutes, then we have our core language program, which is it's normally a 16-week oral language intervention that teaches all the language skills for one grade level in 16 weeks. But what we're doing right now is we're running a summer version of this. And so for $75, you get access to our summer camp. It's a virtual summer camp. You do it at home, but we have a little virtual space where you can hang out. And you're going to get the 16-week program, but you're going to do 2 lessons a week. And so for our littles, our kids that are just entering kindergarten, this is going to probably be one short activity each day that adds up to the amount of the 2 lessons. So we spread it out so they're not being expected to sit there for 30 minutes, but just to sit down, do an activity with you where they're going to learn about one language skill. Okay, so we do things like asking and answering questions, telling stories, telling information, stating our opinions. And then we talk about some very simple grammar, like what's a noun, what's a verb, and we talk about some different vocab. We introduce different types of vocab. We talk about all of these different language skills. And so basically what you would do if you are joining our summer camp or using the core language program is you're pre-teaching all the skills they're going to need in kindergarten, so that when they're sitting in class and there's 25 other kids going crazy around them and the teacher says, hey guys, here's a noun. Let's learn about nouns. Your child has already heard of a noun. And so they're going to have a leg up and they're going to be able to retain that information better than a child who hasn't ever heard these concepts, hasn't been exposed to how we tell a story. So this program is kind of to pre-teach and lay the foundation so that when they get to kindergarten, they're able to hit the ground running and have some of these basic skills in place. Following directions, we hit that one in there too. So yeah, lots of really great skills in that. So if you would like to join our summer camp, that does start June 2nd. So that's coming right up. You can go to speechandlanguagekids.com. Right at the top of the page, you'll see the banner for summer camp. Click on that and it'll take you to the sign up link. And that, like I said, that comes with the full 16 lesson program. And so my recommendation is do 2 lessons a week, and that'll get you through the program in 8 weeks. If you miss a couple here and there, you've got a couple more weeks before summer or before fall, before the kindergarten start date. So you should be able to get all of those lessons in. But even if you only get some of them, they're still going to have that leg up going into kindergarten and have some of those language skills in place that are huge for success. All right. If you guys have any questions, you are welcome inside the Hub at any time. We have a free membership to the Hub at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. The freebie plan gets you access to our discussion board, so you can hop in there and ask questions, and we'll help you figure out what to do to help your child be ready for kindergarten this fall. I wish you all the best of luck, and I can't wait to see you all inside the Hub or hopefully at our summer camp starting on June 2nd. All right, bye for now. Have a great day.